Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Thanks. I never thought the place I called home could betray me in such a strange way. But life has a way of throwing things at you when you least expect it. I had been living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment above an old hardware store in Blue Ridge Hollow, a tucked-away town pressed into the folds of the Appalachian Mountains. It wasn't glamorous, but it was cheap, and it gave me some sense of independence after I finally left my parents' place at 28. When the city inspectors came by and found asbestos creeping through the ceiling insulation, I wasn't surprised. The building always had that dry, dusty smell like a closed-up crawl space. What surprised me was that the council offered to pay for temporary lodging until the cleanup was finished. They didn't want a lawsuit, and frankly, I didn't mind the chance to stay somewhere that wasn't falling apart. That's how I ended up checking into the Timberline Inn, a weather-beaten roadside hotel just off Route 23. Anyone who's driven through the Appalachians has seen places like it, squatting on the edge of town like a stubborn relic, half its neon sign burnt out, paint peeling off the trim. Parking lot cracked and littered with weeds poking through the asphalt. The kind of hotel that looks like it's watched better years roll by without being invited along. Still, the thought of sleeping in a real bed with cable and working heat was a step up from my drafty apartment. I packed up what I needed, clothes, laptop, a stack of worn paperbacks, and checked in on a cool September evening. When I walked through the lobby doors, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No background music, no chatter, just the faint buzzing of a fluorescent light. A couple of faded chairs sat against the wall and a sofa sagged near the front window. Behind the counter, a woman in her late 40s with auburn hair pinned up greeted me. "You here for the council deal?" she asked in a local drawl that stretched her vowels. "Yeah," I said, setting my bag down. "Name's Nathaniel Cross. They should have called ahead." She thumbed through a binder, nodded, and smiled politely. "Yep, I got you right here. They put you down for a week, but that can be extended if your apartment ain't done by then." "Sounds good," I said, relieved things were going smoothly. She reached behind her to grab a key. Not a card, a real brass key with a plastic tag on it. "Room 58, 3rd floor, backside. Elevators are busted, so you'll have to take the stairs." I thanked her, then set my bag on the sagging sofa while she went to fetch the paperwork. That's when the front doors creaked open. A man slipped in, hood pulled low over his face, hands shoved in the pocket of his sweatshirt. He sat down right next to me on the sofa, close enough that I felt the cushion sink. I glanced at him. He didn't say a word, just turned his head slowly and stared straight at me. His eyes were shadowed under the hood, but I could feel them drilling into me. I said after a beat, trying to sound casual. "Do you need something?" His voice came out low and steady. "Nothing. Just your eyes." The way he said it, flat like he was commenting on the weather, made the hair on my arms stand up. Before I could respond, the receptionist came back with my key and some papers. "Here you go, Mr. Cross." Room 58, I practically jumped up, grabbed my bag, and muttered a quick thanks. Heading toward the stairs, I couldn't resist glancing back. The man in the hoodie was still sitting there, his gaze following me as if I'd just stolen something from him. By the time I climbed the creaking stairs and found my room, I told myself I was being paranoid. Creepy or not, he was probably just some local drifter waiting for a ride. Still, when I jammed the key into the rusty lock, my pulse was hammering. I pushed open the door, tossed my bag inside, and turned to shut it. That's when I saw him. The man in the hoodie was standing at the far end of the hallway. His face was lit by the weak yellow glow of the ceiling lights, completely blank. I closed the door fast, locked it, and pressed my back against it. My room was small but not terrible. Queen bed, dresser with a bolted-down TV, floral curtains that smelled faintly of mildew. I unpacked, turned on the TV for background noise, and tried to convince myself I was safe. 3 hours later, I killed the light and crawled into bed. The last thing I remember before drifting off was telling myself, even if somebody was stalking me, how would they get in? That confidence didn't last. Sometime past midnight, I woke to a faint metallic sound. At first, I thought it was the pipes, but as I sat up, I realized it was coming from the door. The sound of metal scraping, clicking, something sliding into the keyhole. Someone was trying to pick the lock. I stumbled to my feet, heart pounding, and stood a few feet from the door. My voice cracked as I called out, "It's late. Can you please leave?" The scraping stopped. For a moment, the silence pressed against my ears. Then I heard him. That same low, steady voice. "But I want to say goodnight." My stomach dropped. I backed away, grabbed the phone on the nightstand, and dialed the front desk. The receptionist picked up groggily. "This is room 58, I hissed. "There's someone outside my door trying to break in. Please send someone or call the police." She promised to send security. I hung up, gripping the phone like a weapon. Then came his voice again, soft through the crack of the door. "Why would you kick your best friend out?" My knees nearly buckled. "I don't know you," I snapped. "Leave me alone." "I have a gun." For a moment, silence. Then I heard quick footsteps retreating down the hall. At almost the same time, another set of footsteps echoed. 2 men, heavier, firmer, the staff. "Sir, you need to leave the premises right now," one of them barked. I didn't open the door. I just stood there, shaking, listening. I heard the shuffle of feet, raised voices, and then the lobby doors slamming shut far below. The rest of the night I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed with the TV on mute, listening for any sound outside my door. My thoughts circled endlessly. How did he know my room? Why me? What if the staff hadn't shown up in time? In the morning, sunlight leaked through the curtains like nothing had happened. The receptionist assured me the man had been escorted off the property, but there was no police report, no name. "Just some drifter," she said. "Happens sometimes." But in the back of my mind, I knew that wasn't true. He hadn't been some random drifter. He knew my name. He knew my room. And as I packed my things to check out, a chill ran through me, colder than the mountain air outside, because when I reached for my bag, I noticed something carved faintly into the wooden nightstand. 3 words, shallow but unmistakable. "See you soon." I never thought asbestos would upend my life the way it did. But when the council inspector showed up at my apartment and told me I had to vacate immediately, I didn't argue. The air tests had come back high, dangerous enough that I couldn't stay another night without risking my lungs. So the city paid for me to stay in a hotel until the work was finished. I'll admit, part of me thought it would feel like a small vacation. I'd been living in that old apartment building for years, listening to pipes creak and neighbors slam doors. A few nights in a hotel didn't sound bad, but that thought didn't last long. The place they booked for me wasn't some chain hotel off the interstate. It was one of those older local lodges tucked into the side of a mountain town. The Appalachian hills loomed all around, the last threads of daylight pulling shadows down across the ridges. It was just after 6 p.m. when I walked into the lobby. The sun was bleeding out behind the peaks, the sky going from orange to a kind of heavy purple. The air had that late September bite, where you can smell wet leaves and wood smoke. The lobby itself smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, though it couldn't hide the mustiness that clung to the wood-paneled walls. A ceiling fan clicked overhead, one blade slightly bent, making the whole thing wobble. I approached the desk, where a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a name tag that read Sandra greeted me. "Evening. You must be Mr. Harlow?" she asked, pulling out a small binder. "That's me," I said, shifting the overnight bag on my shoulder. "The council set me up here. Apartments shut down for asbestos." She gave me the kind of nod that said she'd heard a dozen different versions of the same story. "Yep, got your paperwork right here. We'll get you settled." While she shuffled behind the desk looking for my key, I decided to sit down on one of the sofas in the lobby. The cushions sagged and the fabric scratched against my arms. The TV in the corner was playing a muted weather channel, rain moving in from the west, colder nights ahead. That's when I noticed him. A man in a black hoodie walked through the glass doors and into the lobby. He didn't approach the desk. He didn't greet anyone. He just came straight toward the sofa and sat down right next to me, even though there were plenty of other empty seats. He didn't say a word. He just stared. His face was pale, hollow around the eyes, lips pressed tight. His hood shadowed most of his features, but his gaze was fixed directly on me. I cleared my throat, forcing myself to sound casual. Do you need anything?" The man's mouth curled just slightly, like the hint of a smile. His voice was low, scratchy, like someone who hadn't spoken much in days. "Nothing," he said. Then after a pause, "It's just your eyes." I froze. The words didn't make sense, not in that moment, not from a stranger. Before I could respond, Sandra came back to the desk, holding a key attached to one of those old wooden fobs. "Mr. Harlow?" "Room 58. I stood quickly, almost too quickly, and grabbed the key from her hand. "Thanks." As I turned toward the hallway, I glanced back. The man in the hoodie was still watching me, his head tilted slightly to the side. I walked fast down the carpeted hall, the air colder back there, smelling faintly of dust and bleach. When I reached my door, I slid the old brass key into the lock. But before I could close it behind me, I looked back down the hall. He was there. The man from the lobby. Standing perfectly still, hands in the pocket of his hoodie, his eyes locked on me. "Hey," I called out, trying to mask my unease with politeness. "You're the guy from earlier." "Where you headed?" His answer came flat, toneless. "Room 58. My stomach dropped. That was my room. That's my room," I said, forcing a shaky laugh. "You probably got the wrong number." He didn't respond, didn't move, just stared. I slammed the door shut and locked it, the old rusty mechanism grinding into place. My heart was thumping in my ears. Inside, the room wasn't much. Bed, TV, small desk, a single window that looked out toward the darkening ridges. The air smelled faintly of damp carpet. I unpacked my bag mechanically, trying not to think about the man outside. By the time I turned on the TV, I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid. He was probably some drifter who'd gotten confused. People in small towns can be odd. But when midnight rolled around, I woke to the sound of metal scraping. Not loud banging, not knocking, but the deliberate, careful sound of someone fiddling with the lock. I sat up, my body rigid. The scraping continued, something metallic inserted into the keyhole. A slow twist, a pause, then another twist. I forced myself to move closer to the door, my bare feet silent on the carpet. My voice cracked slightly as I raised it. "It's late. Can you please leave?" The noise stopped. Then his voice, muffled through the door but unmistakable. "But I want to say goodnight." My blood ran cold. I backed away from the door, fumbling for the room phone. My hands were shaking as I dialed the front desk. Sandra answered groggily. "Front desk. This is room 58, I hissed. "There's someone at my door. He's trying to get in. You need to send someone up or call the cops." "All right, sir, just stay put. I'll get help right now." When I hung up, silence filled the hallway again. Then his voice came once more. "Why would you kick your best friend out?" It wasn't playful. It wasn't angry. It was flat, cold. Something inside me snapped. I shouted through the door, "Leave me alone. I have a gun." For a moment, silence. Then footsteps running down the hall. A second later, I heard raised voices, not just his, but the hotel staff. Sandra's stern tone joined by a man's deeper voice. "Sir, you need to leave the premises now." There was scuffling, muffled arguing, footsteps fading away, and then silence again. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the old lamp like a weapon, listening for every creak and shift of the building. By morning, when I dared to crack the door, the hallway was empty. No sign of him. No sign he'd ever been there, except for the faint scratches around the keyhole. I checked out early, told the council I'd stay anywhere else. I didn't care where. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if he'd managed to get in. But I still hear his words sometimes, whispered in the back of my mind. It's just your eyes. I was 23 years old when this happened, and at that time, my life was a weird mix of exhaustion, frustration, and trying to convince myself I was tougher than I actually was. I had been working at a late-night chain restaurant in a small Appalachian town called Fairmont Ridge, West Virginia. It wasn't the kind of place you bragged about working, but it paid just enough to cover rent for the one-bedroom apartment I shared with my cousin Derek and to keep my used Chevy Impala on the road. That particular night had been brutal. Fridays always were. A wave of drunk college kids from the nearby campus stormed in after midnight, raising hell, leaving the tables sticky and shoving crumpled bills at us like we were servants instead of people. I was supposed to clock out by 12:30, but we didn't finish cleaning until almost 1 a.m. My manager, a jittery guy named Scott, who chain-smoked through his shifts, gave us the usual, "Good work, folks," before ducking out first like he always did. "Man, I'm beat," said my coworker Tyler, tossing his apron onto the counter. He was 21, skinny, always reeking of weed, but funny enough to make the long shifts bearable. "You say that every night," I said, rolling my eyes as I clocked out. "Because every night I'm beat," he shot back with a grin. Beside him was Emily, another server, a sharp-tongued girl with dyed red hair and chipped black nail polish. She was one of the few people at work I actually liked. "Y'all trying to smoke before heading out?" Emily asked, raising her eyebrows. Tyler grinned. "You don't gotta ask me twice." I should have said no. I knew damn well I had to be home soon and I was already running on fumes. But the stress of the night had worn me down, and the idea of a quick smoke before bed sounded perfect. So the three of us walked out to the back of the lot, sat on the hood of Tyler's rusted Ford Ranger, and passed a blunt around under the buzzing yellow floodlight. The cold Appalachian air stung my nose, but it felt good against my clammy skin. We laughed about our customers, bitched about Scott, and just existed for a while. But when I checked my phone and saw it was almost 1:15, reality hit me. I lived on the opposite side of town, and my gas gauge had been below E when I pulled into work. My Impala had a nasty habit of stalling if I pushed it too far. "Shit," I muttered, hopping off the hood. "I got a dip. I'm seriously about to run out of gas." Emily looked at me, squinting. "You sure you're good to drive?" "Yeah, I'm fine," I said quickly. "Barely hit it anyway." Tyler smirked. "Be safe, for real." "That side of town's sketchy this time of night," I nodded, waved them off, and got into my car. Now here's the thing about Fairmont Ridge. For a small Appalachian town, it had its fair share of ugly shit. Drugs, homeless encampments under the bridges, half-abandoned strip malls where nobody decent went after dark. And the gas station closest to the restaurant, the one I absolutely hated going to, sat right at the edge of all that. It was called Hickory Mart, though everyone just called it the corner station. It was tucked between an old pawn shop and a row of boarded-up warehouses. During the day, it was sketchy enough, shady dudes hanging around, people panhandling aggressively. But at night, people avoided it like the plague. Fights, robberies, people getting jumped. It just drew the wrong crowd. But I didn't have a choice. My car was running on fumes. So I turned left out of the restaurant lot, my hands tightening on the wheel as I approached the dim glow of Hickory Mart's flickering sign. The lot was empty. Not a single car, not even a beat-up sedan idling with tinted windows like you usually saw there. Just the cold, humming silence of 1:30 a.m. I pulled up to pump 3, cut the engine, and instantly felt the high drain out of me. My chest tightened, that prickly sensation of being watched even though nobody was there. "Just in and out," I muttered to myself, grabbing my wallet. The wind carried the faint smell of trash and stale beer. Somewhere far off, a train horn wailed. The only light came from the buzzing overhead lamps, which cast long, eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. I slid my card into the reader, staring at the tiny green screen that always seemed to take forever to process. Out of habit, I hit the lock button on my key fob again, hearing the reassuring beep of my doors clicking shut. That's when I heard it, a rustle, like plastic crinkling. I glanced up and froze. On the far side of the lot, near the overflowing trash can, a man was digging. His back was to me, his head buried deep inside the bin, but what caught my attention wasn't him. It was the massive white bag slumped at his side. It was easily as big as a person, stuffed to the brim, sagging like something heavy pressed against its walls. The hair on my arms stood up. He lifted his head slowly, like a deer sensing movement. For the first time, I saw his face, gaunt, hollow-eyed, his skin covered in rashes and track marks. His buzzed head gleamed under the gas station lights, and then his eyes locked onto mine. We stared at each other. I quickly turned back to the pump, fumbling with the nozzle. My heart was slamming against my ribs. Just ignore him, I whispered to myself. But the sound of footsteps made my stomach drop. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I glanced sideways. He was walking toward me, dragging something in his hand. It was a little kid's bike, rusty, missing its front tire. He held it effortlessly, like it weighed nothing. And then he spoke. His voice was calm but twisted, like he was reciting lines he'd rehearsed. "I'm not gonna take you." I froze. "What?" I muttered, barely audible. "I said," he repeated, stepping closer, "I'm not gonna take you. We're not gonna take you. Don't look scared. Look pretty." My breath caught in my throat. My fingers fumbled at the pump, pulling the nozzle free and shoving it back into place, even though I hadn't filled a single drop. My instincts screamed at me to run. "Stay the fuck back," I said, my voice trembling. But he just smiled, a thin, cracked smile that didn't touch his dead eyes. And then I heard movement behind me. I whipped around. Another man was crouched by the pump directly behind mine, half hidden in the shadows. He wore a black mask pulled over his nose and mouth, his eyes glinting above it. He hadn't been there a second ago. "Holy shit," I gasped, lunging for my car door. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my keys. I yanked the door open, dove inside, and slammed it shut. The locks clicked, and I jammed the key into the ignition. The first man was at my window now, tapping the kid's bike against the glass, his smile wider. "Don't run," he murmured, his voice muffled but chillingly clear. "If you run, he'll catch you." The masked man started moving around the back of my car. "Fuck this," I hissed, turning the key. The Impala roared to life, and without a second thought, I floored it. The tires screeched as I peeled out of the lot, narrowly missing the masked man as he lunged toward my back door. My heart hammered so hard I thought I might pass out. I didn't stop driving until I was on the highway, tears blurring my vision. By the time I got home, I was shaking so badly I could barely turn the key in my apartment door. Derek was passed out on the couch, Xbox controller in his lap. I didn't wake him. I just locked every door and window, sat on my bed, and tried to process what the hell had almost happened. That bag, that freakishly large white bag. The words still echoed in my head. "I'm not gonna take you. We're not gonna take you." Who the hell was we? And why, when I replayed that night in my head, did I keep picturing the bag sagging open, just enough to see what looked like a pale human hand pressing against the plastic from inside? I never went back to Hickory Mart again. But sometimes when I drive past that corner during the day, I still see people digging through the trash. And I swear, if you look close enough, sometimes one of them will glance up at you, eyes hollow, lips cracked, and smile like they already know who you are. And every time I hit the gas a little harder. I never thought a simple road trip would almost cost me my life. I had just turned 24 and I was restless. Restless in that way only someone living in a suffocatingly small Appalachian town can be. Where the mountains feel like prison walls, where everyone knows you by name, and where you can practically see your future mapped out in the cracked sidewalks and boarded up stores. I lived in a town called Pine Hollow, West Virginia. If you've never heard of it, that's exactly the point. Nobody really leaves Pine Hollow unless it's for the military or because drugs dragged them into some bigger city. I'd always told myself I was gonna get out, but telling yourself and actually doing it are two different things. when my old high school friend Zach Turner messaged me out of the blue saying, "Bro, you should come out to California. Couch is yours anytime. Hell, I'll show you the coast, the mountains, the whole thing." Something in me clicked. Zach had moved west 3 years earlier and posted pictures online of beaches, palm trees, and sunsets that didn't look real. Meanwhile, my life was a cycle of work, drinking too much, and staring at the same 2 stoplights every night. So I decided to do it, to drive, by myself. 2.5 days from Pine Hollow to Sacramento. "Are you fucking serious?" my cousin Jake asked when I told him. He leaned back on our rickety porch chair, cigarette hanging out of his mouth. "Yeah, why not? I'll split it into 2 long days. Stop halfway, crash at a hotel, then finish it." Jake exhaled smoke and shook his head. "Man, that's a lot of driving alone. Shit gets weird out there at night. You don't know those roads. I'll be fine. Got GPS, got music, it's just driving." "Yeah," Jake muttered, flicking ash onto the porch, "until it ain't." I laughed him off. If I'm being honest, part of me wanted something weird to happen. Something memorable. Something that made me feel alive. The first day of driving was long but uneventful. I started before sunrise, passing through Morgantown, then out into Ohio, then across the endless flatness of Indiana and Illinois. I stopped for gas station coffee, crappy fast food, and to stretch my legs when my lower back screamed at me. By the time the sun set, I was somewhere in Missouri, and exhaustion hit me like a hammer. I'd booked a hotel earlier that morning, some budget place outside a little city called Hillsbury. I had the address saved on my phone, and according to the map, I was about 30 minutes away when the sky turned pitch black. I remember checking the clock. It was just past 10:15 p.m. The road ahead was empty, 2 lanes cutting through fields and patches of dark woods. My headlights lit up the reflective green exit signs, and I knew I had one coming up. That's when my phone died. The screen went black mid-song. I hit the power button, but nothing. Just that empty black reflection of my own tired face. "Fuck," I muttered, slapping it against the steering wheel. I had a charger, but it was one of those old-ass ones with the frayed wire and loose connection. Sometimes it worked if you twisted it just right. Sometimes it didn't. I jammed it into the cigarette lighter port, fiddled with the cord, but nothing happened. Dead. I felt my chest tighten. Out here with no phone, no map? I didn't know the exact exit, only that it was coming up soon. "All right," I said out loud to calm myself. "Just guess. Worst case, I turn around, so I took the next exit. The ramp curved off into a 2-lane road. No signs for hotels, no gas stations, just an old boarded-up building on one corner and a darkened gas station on the other. The kind with faded numbers on the price sign and trash blowing across the lot. The road was quiet. Too quiet. No cars in either direction, no houses, just dense Appalachian woods pressing in on both sides. My high beams carved a narrow tunnel through the blackness. I drove for maybe 3 miles, waiting to see a sign, anything. My stomach sank. I had no idea where the hell I was. Finally, I pulled onto the gravel shoulder and put the car in park. I grabbed the useless charger again, twisting the cord, whispering, "Come on, you piece of shit." My hands shook more than they should have. The charger sparked once, then nothing. I sat back, rubbed my eyes. "Okay, worst case, I backtrack. I'll find the highway again." That's when I saw the headlights. In my rearview mirror, a pair of lights appeared out of nowhere. A car had pulled over, maybe 6 car lengths behind me. For a second, relief hit me. Maybe it was a cop or someone who could give directions, but then I noticed. No flashing lights, just regular headlights. And they didn't move. They just sat there. "All right," I muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. I waited a full minute, glancing in the mirror. The car didn't budge. Nobody got out. Just 2 glowing eyes in the dark. My gut twisted. Something wasn't right. I put my car back in drive and eased onto the road. My tires crunched over gravel, then hummed against asphalt. And almost immediately, the car behind me did the same. My throat went dry. "Don't do this," I whispered. Don't fucking do this. I drove straight, keeping my speed at 50. The car matched me, hanging back just far enough to stay in the shadows of my rear view. At the first chance I had, I took a right turn. My blinker clicked loud in the silence. The headlights followed. Shit, I hissed, my pulse hammering. The road narrowed, darker now, no shoulder, no lights. Just woods and the occasional rusted mailbox. I turned again onto an even smaller road. The headlights followed. Panic surged. I could feel sweat soaking my shirt. Okay, just test them, I muttered. I slowed down, then quickly pulled a U-turn, tires screeching. My headlights swung across the trees and that's when I saw it. The car behind me had stopped. Dead center of the road. I braked hard, my chest seized. The other car idled there, engine rumbling. Then the headlights cut off. Darkness swallowed everything. Fuck this, I breathed, fumbling for reverse. A door slammed. I saw a shape moving. A man stepped into the faint glow of my parking lights. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dirty flannel and jeans. His face was shadowed, but I saw his grin. Wide, wrong. And then he started jogging toward my door. Nope, I screamed, slamming the wheel right. My car lurched off the road, bouncing over the grass. Branches scraped the side, but I floored it, jerking back onto the asphalt just past where his car blocked the lane. In my mirror, I saw him sprint back to his vehicle. His headlights blazed to life again. He was coming. I pushed my Impala as hard as it would go, the engine roaring, the speedometer needle climbing. The other car stayed behind me, closer now, swerving like he was trying to scare me. Come on, come on, come on, I screamed, gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. The road curved sharp to the left. I took it too fast, tires squealing, almost losing control. But I didn't slow down. I needed to get back to the highway. That was my only chance. For 10 minutes it was pure terror. Him tailing me, closing in, backing off like he was toying with me. I couldn't breathe. My chest hurt. I thought I was going to pass out. Finally I saw it. The green glow of a highway sign up ahead. I didn't think. I just floored it, barreling up the ramp back onto the main road. Cars, blessed cars, semi-trucks, taillights stretching into the distance. Civilization. I merged hard, cutting off a van, ignoring the horn. In my mirror, the car that had chased me slowed, then stopped at the top of the ramp. Its headlights hung there for a moment like eyes staring at me. Then it turned off its lights and disappeared. I drove the next 20 miles, shaking so hard I thought I'd lose control. When I finally pulled into a gas station, I stumbled out, bought a new charger with trembling hands, and sat in my locked car until my phone powered back on. When I finally reached the hotel, it was past midnight. I carried my bag inside, numb, barely registering the receptionist's cheerful, "Welcome, sir." In my room, I locked the door, sat on the bed, and stared at my reflection in the black TV screen. All I could think was, if I hadn't reacted, if my car had gotten stuck in the grass, if anything had gone differently, that man would have reached my door. And I don't think I'd be here telling you this now. I never thought I'd end up working nights in a place like that, but life doesn't exactly hand you the choices you'd prefer. Back in the late 90s, after a string of jobs that went nowhere and a marriage that ended worse, I took work where I could find it. The Appalachian foothills weren't known for good-paying gigs, and my options had narrowed down to two: stocking shelves at a 24-hour grocery store for minimum wage, or taking a security job for the Gray Valley bus depot. I picked the depot. It wasn't glamorous. Most nights it was me sitting under the humming lights, nursing burnt coffee from the office pot, trying to keep warm against the draft that seeped through every cracked window and rusted door. The depot wasn't much more than a concrete block of a building with a ticket counter, 3 long benches, and 2 flickering overhead lights that buzzed like cicadas. Out back were the bus bays, stretching out into the wet blackness of the hills. People came and went at all hours. Workers heading out to night shifts, kids coming back from the community college, drifters moving through, and the kind of folks who didn't have anywhere better to be. Some were harmless, some weren't. I used to joke with my buddy Randy, another guard on rotation, that our real job wasn't security but crowd psychology. We were part babysitter, part cop, part bartender, and sometimes just a pair of ears. But every now and then something darker walked in. It was one of those nights when the rain came down so hard it sounded like someone dumping buckets onto the tin roof. I was sitting in my little golf cart under the overhang outside, collar pulled up, the steam from my coffee mixing with the mist in the air. My shift had started at 6 p.m., and by the time the wall clock inside read 10, I'd already walked the lot twice and checked the fence by the woods once. That was when I saw her. A woman, maybe mid-40s, sat on the far bench under the depot roof. She had this thin raincoat that wasn't doing her much good. Her hair, long and dark, clung damp against her cheeks, and she clutched a purse like it was her lifeline. She wasn't doing anything, just sitting, eyes down, waiting. I drove the cart closer, trying not to spook her. "You doing all right, ma'am?" I asked. She looked up at me, blinking rain from her lashes. "Yeah, just waiting on the 11 o'clock bus." Her voice was soft, tired. "You need anything? Coffee? It's rough waiting in this weather." Her lips tugged into the faintest smile. "If you could get me a cup, I'd appreciate it." "Not a problem." I radioed Randy, told him to pour a cup and set it by the office door for me. While we waited, I stood nearby trying to make small talk. "Been waiting long?" "Half an hour," she said. "Bus should be here soon. They're never on time, though, are they?" I chuckled. "Not in this town. Not anywhere, really." Her smile lingered for a moment, then she went quiet again. There was something about her, this sadness, this weariness, that made me want to keep her company. A crackle on the radio told me the coffee was ready. "Be right back," I told her. It couldn't have been more than a minute that I was gone. But when I rounded the corner with the cup in hand, everything had changed. The woman was on her feet, clutching her purse tight against her chest. A hooded figure loomed over her, yanking at the strap, trying to tear it from her arms. She cried out, stumbling backward against the bench. "Hey!" I shouted, dropping the cup. Hot coffee splattered across the pavement as I sprinted toward them. The hooded man's head snapped toward me. His face was shadowed, but I saw his mouth twist into something mean. He let go of the purse, but instead of bolting like I expected, he pulled something from his pocket. The metallic click was unmistakable. A switchblade glinted under the depot lights. "Back the fuck off," he snarled. "I'll cut your throat." My heart thudded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I was unarmed, unless you counted the flashlight on my belt. But I wasn't about to let this bastard hurt her. "You don't want to do this," I said, voice low and steady. "Cops are already on the way." It was a lie, but it was all I had. "Bullshit." He stepped closer, knife flashing as the rain hit it. "Last chance. Walk away. Run!" I barked at the woman. She didn't hesitate. She bolted across the lot, shoes slapping against wet pavement. The man cursed and half-turned as if to chase her. That was my opening. Adrenaline took over. I lunged, slamming into him with my shoulder. The knife flew from his hand as we crashed to the concrete. His face smacked the ground with a sick crack and he groaned, dazed. I scrambled, snatching up the knife before he could. "Get the hell out of here!" I roared, holding the blade like I meant business. "Cops are coming!" For a second, he just stared at me, rage burning in his eyes. Then, with a guttural growl, he pushed himself up and staggered backward. He spit blood onto the ground, muttered something I couldn't catch, and then turned and bolted into the rain. I stood there, chest heaving, the knife trembling in my hand. The woman had stopped at the far end of the lot, her arms wrapped around herself. I jogged to her, still on edge. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, though her face was pale. "I think so." "Oh God, thank you." Her voice broke and she reached out, clutching my arm. "You saved me." I shook my head. "Just doing my job. You don't owe me anything." She gave me a shaky smile, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. Then she stepped forward and hugged me, holding on tight. For a moment I held her back, feeling her shiver. Then the headlights of the bus cut across the lot. Her ride had arrived. She pulled away, whispered another thank you, and hurried onto the bus. I watched as it pulled out of the depot and disappeared into the night. I saw her 3 more times in the weeks that followed. Always at night, always quiet, always alone. Each time she gave me a smile, sometimes even a wave. And then one day she was gone, never came back. I asked around, drivers, ticket clerks, even some of the regulars. Nobody knew her name. Nobody remembered her. It was like she'd just vanished. Sometimes when I think about those years, I wonder where she ended up. If she found peace, or if trouble caught up with her somewhere down the line. She'd be in her 60s now, maybe older. I hope she's all right. Because the way that man looked at her, the way he chased her before I tackled him, something about it stuck with me. It wasn't just mugging. It felt personal. And on some nights, even now, when I close my eyes, I swear I can still hear the rain on that depot roof, the knife clattering on the pavement, and his voice promising to cut my throat. I worked the night shift at a little mom-and-pop gas station off Route 19 in the foothills of the Appalachians back in the early 90s. To this day, I can still smell the stale coffee that burned for hours in the glass pot and hear the buzzing of that old Coca-Cola cooler by the counter. The place wasn't much to look at, just 2 pumps out front, a flickering sign with half the bulbs dead, and a cramped interior that sold more cigarettes and cheap beer than anything else. I didn't take the job because I loved it. Truth is, I needed it. My marriage had been hanging on by a thread and money was tighter than hell. My ex-husband had walked out 2 winters prior, left me with bills stacked high and a boy to raise. During the day, I'd try to piece together some semblance of normal life for my son, and at night I'd sit behind that counter and pray the wrong people didn't walk through the door. The station was family-owned, run by a man named Arthur Tate, who inherited it from his father. Arthur was a good man, if a bit gruff. Paid me under the table half the time, slipped me a sandwich or 2 when my fridge was bare. But he also warned me when I first started. Night shifts ain't like the day. You're not just selling gas, you're babysitting the whole goddamn highway. Some folks are just tired and hungry, some are drunk, and some don't want nothing but trouble. Keep your head up. Trust your gut. And if something feels off, it probably is. That advice stuck with me. The night it happened, Arthur had me overlapping with another employee, Clyde, for a couple of hours. The week before, there'd been an armed robbery over in the next county. 2 guys in ski masks, shotguns under their coats. They cleaned out a station just like ours. Arthur didn't want me sitting alone until traffic thinned out. So Clyde and I manned the counter together from 8 to 10. He was a wiry guy in his 20s, more interested in his Walkman than the customers, but at least he was company. Around 10, he clocked out, gave me a lazy salute, and walked into the rainy night. By 10:30, the station was dead quiet. Just me, the hum of the cooler, and the occasional car hissing by on wet pavement. That's when she walked in. The girl couldn't have been more than 20. Pale as chalk, black lipstick, black eyeliner, black clothes from head to toe. She looked like she'd stepped out of some heavy metal music video. But what I noticed more than her appearance was the way she moved. Fidgety, restless, fingers twitching against her thighs. She came up to the counter with a pack of Marlboros, paid in crumpled bills, thanked me politely, and stuffed them in her bag. "Have a good night," I said, already reaching for the paper towels to start cleaning the hot dog case. But she didn't leave. She drifted down one aisle, then the next, touching items like she couldn't decide what she wanted. Soup cans, beef jerky, motor oil. 5 minutes passed and she was still wandering. Finally, I set the rag down. "You need help finding something, hun?" She walked back up to the counter, biting her lip. "My car ran out of gas up the road. I need to fill it, but I don't have a can." I nodded. We kept a few plastic cans behind the counter, bright red, $10 each. I grabbed one, set it on the counter, and told her the price. Her face fell. I don't have enough." That rubbed me wrong. Cigarettes first, gas second? But I've always worn my heart on my sleeve more than I should. Don't worry about it, I said finally. I'll cover the can. Just pay it forward someday. She smiled wide, too wide. Thank you. You're a lifesaver, I held up my hand. Hold on. I can't buy the gas for you. Barely got enough to fill my own tank. Yeah, I get it, she said softly. Thank you so much, really. I'll just call someone for gas money. You got change for the payphone? I asked. She nodded. Yeah, I do. She thanked me again and walked outside. Something in my gut twisted. Maybe it was the way she smiled. Maybe it was the way her eyes darted around like a rabbit's. I don't know. But I leaned over the counter and flicked the switch to bring up the outside camera feed. Instead of heading to the payphone right outside the front door, she walked straight to a van parked by the exit. The passenger window rolled down. She leaned in, talking to whoever was inside, pointing back toward the station. My throat went dry. I whispered under my breath, "Please, God, don't let this be what I think it is." They talked for maybe 2 minutes. Then she turned, heading straight back inside. She approached the counter again, calm as could be. My uncle gave me some gas money. But, I think your pumps are broken. I tried them all. They don't work. I stared at her. They work just fine. Been here 10 years. You must not be doing it right. She tilted her head. Could you come out and show me? Just for a minute? I shook my head. Can't leave the store unattended. Against the rules, she pouted. Please. It'll only take a second. Try another pump, I said, my voice sharper than before. I already did. Her voice pitched higher, almost whining. None of them work. I need your help. Her teeth clenched, her fists balled. She stomped one foot on the floor like a toddler about to throw a tantrum. Then came this noise, a breathy animal sound like a dog panting but sharper, frantic. It raised the hairs on my arms. That's when I stopped pretending to be nice. I gave her what my son later called my cold bitch smile, the one that said I was done playing. By the way, I said evenly, I saw you talking with your friends out in that van. Already called the cops. Gave them your plate number. They'll be here any minute. Cops in this town are fast. It was a bluff, pure and simple, but her face drained of color. She didn't argue. She didn't whine. She spun on her heel, stormed out, and ran to the van. Before she even got the sliding door shut, the tires screeched and the van peeled out of the lot, fishtailing as it vanished into the rain. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone when I actually called the sheriff. I gave them what description I could. The girl, the van, the whole story. An hour later, a deputy came by to take my statement. 2 days after that, they found the van abandoned near a wooded pull-off 20 miles north. The interior had been gutted, slashed with box cutters, bashed with hammers. The cops told me they didn't know exactly what those kids had planned, but it probably wasn't just robbery. I quit 2 weeks later, turned in my notice, packed up my boy, and moved 2 towns over. Some nights, though, I still hear that panting sound, that weird, rabid rhythm in her breath, and I think about how close I came to stepping outside, 1 step away from disappearing into a van, 1 step away from never seeing my son again. So if you take anything from this story, it's this. Trust your gut. Always. Because sometimes the devil doesn't kick in the door. Sometimes she smiles, thanks you, and asks you real sweet to step outside. I never thought I'd end up back in the Appalachian hills, but life has a way of dragging you where you swore you'd never go. I'm 32 now, a professional photographer by trade, but not the glamorous kind. My work wasn't about fashion shoots or magazine covers in New York. It was county fairs, small-town weddings, newspaper spreads of mayors shaking hands with business owners. Pictures that captured people's lives, but not the kind that made your name known. The only reason I even got this new job was because my last one nearly killed me. My old editor was a tyrant, yelling, nitpicking, calling me useless in front of clients. I held on for as long as I could, but after one particularly brutal night when he trashed my photos of a local high school graduation, I quit. I packed up, left the city behind, and started answering classifieds like a desperate man. That's when I found the listing. Regional magazine hiring staff photographer. Focus on lifestyle, community, and investigative features. Confidential assignments possible. Something about the confidential part hooked me. I told myself it was because I loved adventure, but if I'm honest, it was because I was broke and cornered. The office wasn't in some glass tower. It was in a converted brick building downtown in a small Appalachian city. When I stepped inside, I didn't know what to expect. The space was quiet, cozy. Walls painted a soft peachy color, potted plants scattered around rows of desks where writers tapped away. The hum of conversation and clacking keyboards felt almost comforting. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking into a war zone. "Hey, new guy," one of the writers called, raising his coffee cup at me. "Morning," I said, managing a smile. I found my office, a small corner room with a window facing an alley. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine. I hadn't had my own office in 6 years of working photography gigs. That alone felt like a fresh start. I'd barely set my laptop down when there was a knock at the door. A tall man with a wiry frame and silver hair stepped in. He wore a simple button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled and had that kind of Appalachian drawl that made everything sound slower, measured. "You settling in all right?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I said, standing quickly and smoothing out my pants. "No need to call me sir," he chuckled. "Name's Harold Benton, but most folks here just call me Mr. Benton. I run this place. You're Justin, right?" "That's right." He sat down across from me, resting his hands together. "I've seen your work. You've got an eye for detail most folks don't. You don't just take pictures, you catch what's in between the moments. That's rare." "Thank you," I said, relieved someone finally noticed. "That's why I wanted you here. This ain't just about birthday parties and ribbon cuttings. Sometimes we get tipped off about things. Powerful folks who don't want their business in the open. And sometimes we need someone we can trust to document it." Quietly, his tone shifted, low and deliberate. "I think you're the man for it." I blinked. "Confidential assignments, you mean?" He nodded. "Exactly. But let's not rush. You get a feel for things here first. We'll talk again." And just like that, he left, leaving me both flattered and uneasy. I couldn't help but think, what the hell did I just sign up for? That first week was a blur of community events, a county fair, a ribbon cutting for a new diner, a local football game. Everyone was friendly and the paychecks cleared, something I hadn't been able to say in months. But Benton's words stayed in my head. Late Thursday afternoon, he appeared in my doorway again. "You free tomorrow night?" he asked. "I think so." "Why?" He stepped in, shut the door behind him. His eyes held mine, serious. "There's a meeting," he said. "A gathering of people who think they run this whole valley. Politicians, business owners, old money. They call themselves a brotherhood, though that's not what they'd say in public. I've tried for years to expose them. Every time they shut me down. Shut my magazines down too." "Brotherhood," I repeated, skeptical. "They meet every Friday, midnight sharp, in an old farmhouse outside town. Been doing it for decades. My sources say tomorrow night's important. They'll be inducting someone new. I need proof. Pictures. You get them, we'll have enough to blow this wide open." My pulse quickened. "Why me?" "Because you're careful. You blend in, and I can't trust anyone else." I hesitated. It was insane, but it was also the first time in years someone had put faith in me. "I'll do it," I said. Benton studied me, then nodded. "Wear dark clothes. Park 2 streets away. I'll tell you where to hide. Don't let them see you Friday came too quickly." I told myself it was just another assignment, but my hands shook as I pulled on black jeans, a hoodie, and a cap. The drive into the hills was long, the roads empty and unlit. I parked where Benton told me, 2 streets from the farmhouse. The place looked abandoned, paint peeling, windows dark, but in the basement faint candlelight flickered. I slipped inside through a side door, careful not to make a sound. The air was heavy with mildew. In the basement, I found candles arranged in a circle. Dark stains marked the floor. My stomach twisted. I snapped photos quickly, whispering to myself, in and out, that's all. But then I heard footsteps. Voices. I killed my flashlight and ducked into the corner Benton had told me about. From there, I had a clear view. One by one, people entered the room, all dressed in red hooded robes. My breath caught as I recognized some of them. The mayor, the county sheriff, a wealthy contractor who owned half the businesses downtown, even the doctor I'd seen on local billboards. They stood in a circle, chanting low. "The time has come to renew the oath," one said. It was the grocery store owner. "The time has come to complete the circle." I kept snapping photos, my hands trembling. "There are 11 of us," the man continued. "Since Gordon's death, we've been incomplete. Tonight, we are 12 again." A goat was brought forward. They lit more candles, their chants rising. My stomach churned as I realized I wasn't just documenting corruption. I was watching a ritual. "Bring him in," the grocer ordered. My heart raced. "Bring who in?" Then I felt it, a tap on my shoulder. I spun around, nearly dropping my camera. Standing there in a red robe was Benton, my boss. "Shh," he whispered, grinning. My eyes dropped to his robe. The truth hit me like a hammer. He wasn't trying to expose them, he was one of them. And suddenly I understood I wasn't here to document a new member. I was the new member. The ritual blurred together after that. I remember being led into the circle, my camera ripped from my hands. I remember their voices echoing, their hands on my shoulders. Benton leaning close, whispering, "Follow me and you'll live. Resist and you won't see daylight." So I followed. I was branded that night, not with fire, but with fear. Once you were in, there was no leaving. That was 6 months ago, and now I'm stuck. They own me. Every Friday, I sit in that basement with them. They plan, land grabs, drug shipments, payoffs to keep cops quiet. And then they assign tasks. Do this, cover this up, make this person disappear. I never wanted this. I just wanted to take pictures. But now my pictures are evidence for them. Blackmail against anyone who crosses the brotherhood.